Here at MCAT Savior, you might have seen us mention a few times about how we believe the AAMC is artificially deflating MCAT scores and making it harder for average students to score high on this exam. So here's the logic and reasoning behind why they're doing what they're doing. The first thing to know is that the MCAT is a norm reference test that's graded on a bell curve. This means that approximately 50% of the people are going to be above the 50th percentile score and 50% are going to be below. This is what that generally looks like in any given year, and typically the 50th percentile score hovers around a 500. So if the exam is normally distributed, why would they artificially deflate scores? Basically, what's happened over the years since the exam was first launched in 2015 is that students have gotten a lot better at taking the exam. And in addition to students getting better at taking the exam, more and more advanced prep resources have reached the market that have basically transformed the way students study for this exam. So when students do better on average, the AAMC is caught in a bind because they've basically said that a 500 in any year is equivalent to a 500 in any other year within a certain window of testing. So to maintain their score purity, they're forced to resort to a lot of tricks because nowadays what's happened with the curve is that it's become skewed. This is a general illustration. This is a general illustration of what that looks like. Just take our drawing with a grain of salt. But basically what's happened is that even though the 50% of test takers are under roughly 500 and 50% are above it, the issue is that there's more people scoring in the higher score ranges than there was historically. And what's that doing is that's basically pulling all the averages up. So if you take a look at matriculant data for both USMD and USDO schools over the past 5 to 6 years, you can see that there's a very, very steady score creep in the average scores of matriculating students. And a big reason for this creep is that on average, more students are scoring in the higher brackets. So think about it like 510 to 528 would be the higher bracket of scores. More students are kind of sitting in that bracket, which is pulling up the averages. And AAMC can't have that happen because that would reduce the overall value of their exam. So how do they compensate? How do they basically push the curve back so that it normalizes and look more like it did in 2015? Well, there's a number of ways you can do that as a test-based company, but unfortunately, a lot of those ways would ruin their curve entirely. So they resort to different methods. One of the key methods that they use, and the one that we want students to focus on and have as a big takeaway from this lesson, is that the easiest way to deflate scores and pull the entire curve back into alignment is to make the entire test harder so that it will unfairly target the high-scoring individuals, because those are the individuals that have the most capability to score high on this exam. So if you take a look at the progression of full-length AAMC tests from the first FL that was released back in 2015 to the newer ones like FL4 and whatever they decide to release this year, you'll notice that the exams don't look similar at all. And then when you take your actual exam, you'll think, wow, this exam doesn't look anything like what I've taken before. And the reason for that is because by making the entire exam harder, AAMC is basically trying to slow down the individuals that are already in those really, really high score brackets. Unfortunately, this also has this double side effect of affecting average individuals as well. So for high scoring individuals that are scoring in the 90th percentile on practice exams and then going and getting not a 90th percentile on test day, that effect is even worse for individuals who are scoring in the 50th or 60th percentile because we get completely overwhelmed by the sheer difficulty of this exam. There's not a lot that we can do about it as students except to maximize our prep, maximize our test taking and timing skills, and be aware of the fact that AAMC is constantly doing this so that when we get to test day, we're more prepared to deal with the higher level of difficulty that we're going to be experiencing. And remember, this difficulty is only going to keep increasing until AAMC eventually resets the exam and reformats it. So this can be very difficult to deal with, but at MCAT Savior, we have a ton of free resources that are designed to help. So we hope they do help, especially given how difficult the AAMC is making the MCAT these days. Alright, that was a complicated lesson. If you still need help, check out our full-length blog post that we linked in the video description, explore more of our YouTube channel, or just head on over to mcatsavior.com where you can get all of our strategy courses for free.